The death of Pope Francis has set ancient machinery into motion. In the heart of Rome, 135 cardinal electors will soon gather in the Sistine Chapel to select the leader of 1.4 billion Catholics worldwide. But this conclave will be unlike any before it. If you're already finding this content interesting, why not subscribe to African Sphere for more untold perspectives? Hit like, share this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps us create more content like this. Thank you. Among these cardinals stands a figure from the heart of Africa, Cardinal Philippe Ouédraogo of Burkina Faso, a man whose journey from a rural African village to the Vatican's inner chambers represents a profound intersection of worlds. But what if this conclave becomes more than a simple transition of power? What if it becomes a battlefield between Western imperial influence and African revolutionary thought? In the shadows of colonialism's long reach, Burkina Faso has produced two remarkable leaders walking parallel paths of resistance. Cardinal Ouédraogo, born in 1945 in Conéan to a family with Muslim origins, rose through the church's ranks to become only the second cardinal ever from Burkina Faso. His story is one of quiet persistence within the system, a journey that saw him ordained as a priest in 1973, earning a doctorate in canon law from the Pontifical Urbaniana University in Rome, and eventually being elevated to cardinal by Pope Francis in 2014. What makes Cardinal Ouédraogo particularly unique is his background as both a religious leader and a figure who understands revolutionary struggle. As president of the Symposium of Episcopal Conferences of Africa and Madagascar, SECAM, he has represented the voice of African Catholics at the highest levels of the Church. Yet he remains deeply connected to the struggles of his homeland, where he has been a moral force and mediator during political crises. Meanwhile, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, just 37 years old, seized power in September 2022, becoming the world's second youngest head of state. His revolution is not merely political, but ideological, a direct challenge to Western neo-colonial influence and a revival of Thomas Sankara's revolutionary vision. Two men from the same soil, two different approaches to power, one shared vision of African dignity. The parallels run deeper than nationality. Both men emerged from a country shaped by the trauma of French colonization. Both have confronted systems of power larger than themselves. And both have navigated the complexities of leadership in a nation caught between tradition and transformation. Cardinal Ouédraogo's background uniquely positions him to understand the revolutionary spirit embodied by Traoré. Coming from a family with Muslim origins, converting to Catholicism, and rising through the Church's ranks, he has lived at the intersection of different worlds his entire life. This experience of crossing boundaries and navigating multiple identities gives him a perspective rare among Vatican leadership. Ibrahim Traoré's revolution goes beyond military control. He has explicitly positioned himself as an heir to Thomas Sankara's legacy, with his government embracing populism, geopolitical non-alignment, and nationalization of foreign assets. His words at the Russia-Africa Summit revealed his core philosophy. A slave who cannot assume his own revolt does not deserve to be pitied. We do not feel sorry for ourselves. We do not ask anyone to feel sorry for us. The Burkinabe people do not ask for sympathy. They demand the right to fight for themselves. Traoré's revolution seeks to dismantle what he sees as the ongoing chains of colonial control. He has expelled French forces, formed stronger ties with Russia and Turkey, and called for a federation with Mali, all direct challenges to Western influence in Africa. His vision is clear. Burkina Faso doesn't need more donations, but dignity, productivity, and control of its own future. To understand Traoré's revolutionary vision is to understand the legacy of Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary leader who renamed Upper Volta as Burkina Faso, Land of Upright People, in 1984. Sankara's brief 4-year rule from 1983 to 1987 transformed the country through mass vaccination campaigns, agricultural self-sufficiency, women's rights, and environmental protection programs. Sankara challenged the neo-colonial power structures that kept Africa dependent on Western nations. He rejected foreign aid that came with strings attached, promoted local production, and espoused a pan-African vision of continental solidarity against imperialism. His famous declaration, "He who feeds you, controls you," embodied his commitment to African self-determination. When Sankara was assassinated in 1987, his vision was temporarily buried with him, but his spirit lived on in the memory of Burkinabe people, waiting for resurrection. As Sankara himself predicted, while revolutionaries as individuals can be murdered, you cannot kill ideas. Now, 38 years after Sankara's death, Traoré has rekindled that revolutionary flame. He has named streets after Sankara, invoked his principles in speeches, and implemented policies reminiscent of the Sankara era. For many Burkinabe, particularly the youth, Traoré represents the return of Sankara's dream, a second chance at an African revolutionary path that was violently cut short. While Captain Traoré confronts colonial powers openly, Cardinal Ouédraogo has worked within one of the West's most powerful institutions. As a moral leader and a man of dialogue, he has been a mediator during Burkina Faso's political crises. When President Kaboré faced a wave of instability in 2022, Ouédraogo was urgently called in to mediate to ensure a bloodless transition of power. But his deference to institutional power should not be mistaken for acceptance of the status quo. Cardinal Ouédraogo has been deeply committed to dialogue with other religions while challenging harmful traditional practices. He has vocally defended women against accusations of witchcraft and advocated for those marginalized by society. Cardinal Ouédraogo's vision of social justice carries echoes of liberation theology, the movement within Catholicism that emphasizes economic and social justice for the poor and oppressed. As president of CICAM, he has encouraged justice and peace commissions to raise public awareness about social justice and come to the defense of human rights in our continent. Liberation theology, which emerged primarily in Latin America in the 1960s and 1970s, represents a radical reinterpretation of the gospel through the lens of the marginalized. Its central premise that the church must make a preferential option for the poor challenged the traditional alignment of Catholic institutions with political and economic power. In Africa, liberation theology took on distinctive forms, often intertwining with anti-colonial and post-colonial struggles. African theologians like Jean-Marc Ayla of Cameroon developed what became known as theology under the tree, grassroots theological reflection arising from the concrete experiences of African communities facing poverty, exploitation, and political repression. During South Africa's anti-apartheid struggle, many Catholic leaders embraced liberation theology's emphasis on social justice, with Archbishop Desmond Tutu, though Anglican, not Catholic, becoming a global symbol of Christian resistance to oppression. In Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Angola, Catholics informed by liberation theology supported independence movements against Portuguese and British colonial rule. The Vatican's relationship with liberation theology has been complicated. Under Pope John Paul II and Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict XVI, the movement faced significant criticism and constraints. Several prominent liberation theologians were silenced or restricted from teaching. The Vatican's concerns centered on liberation theology's use of Marxist analysis and its political implications. Pope Francis, the first pope from Latin America, has partially rehabilitated liberation theology, meeting with founders of the movement and emphasizing many of the same social justice concerns. Yet tensions remain between the institutional church and the more radical implications of a theology that challenges economic and political power structures. Cardinal Ouédraogo navigates this complex landscape carefully. While avoiding explicit identification with liberation theology's more controversial aspects, he embodies many of its core values in his advocacy for social justice. In a New Year's message, he expressed hope for an Africa free from the debts that have been strangling it, language that resonates with both Sankara's and Traoré's anti-colonial economic positions. While working within the church structure, Cardinal Ouédraogo has consistently advocated for an African church that stands with those who suffer. The question remains, can the cardinal who navigates power so skillfully bring elements of Traoré's revolutionary spirit into the heart of the Vatican? This papal conclave will be historic. With the current composition of the College of Cardinals, this will be the least European conclave in history. For the first time, European cardinals will not make up a majority of the conclave. Among the 135 electors, 19 are from Africa, a significant increase from previous conclaves when only 11 African cardinals participated in 2013. This shift is not accidental. Pope Francis intentionally revolutionized the College of Cardinals by picking men from the peripheries who reflect his pastoral orientation and concern for the poor. The result is a conclave that will be less Italian, less European, less curial, but more Asian and African. The changing demographics of the College of Cardinals mirrors the changing face of global Catholicism itself. The Church's center of gravity has been shifting from Europe to the global South, where Catholic populations are growing rapidly, especially in Africa. While European and North American Catholic numbers stagnate or decline, African Catholicism is vibrant and expanding. Among the African cardinal electors, Cardinal Peter Turkson of Ghana will play a particularly significant role. Following Cardinal Puljic's decision not to attend due to health concerns, Turkson is expected to serve as the senior cardinal priest in the conclave, a position of ceremonial and practical importance. Other influential African cardinals include Cardinal Fridolin Ambongo from the Democratic Republic of Congo, who has been mentioned as a possible papal candidate himself. As president of Africa's Association of Catholic Bishops, Ambongo represents the growing voice of African Catholicism on the global stage. Is this the moment when Africa's voice could fundamentally reshape the world's oldest continuing institution? To understand the significance of this moment, we must look at how papal elections actually unfold. A ritual shrouded in secrecy and steeped in tradition. The conclave is a process designed to insulate the cardinals from outside influence. After entering the Sistine Chapel, the doors are sealed, and the cardinal electors remain in complete isolation until they have selected a new pope. The term conclave itself comes from the Latin cum clave, literally with a key, referring to the locked doors that separate the cardinals from the outside world. Each day, the cardinals cast up to 4 rounds of votes on paper ballots, writing their choice under the Latin phrase eligo in summum pontificem. I elect as Supreme Pontiff. After each round of inconclusive voting, the ballots are burned with chemicals that produce black smoke, visible to the waiting crowds in St. Peter's Square. When a candidate achieves the required 2/3 majority, the ballots are burned with chemicals that produce white smoke, signaling to the world that a new pope has been elected. This arcane process, largely unchanged for centuries, will now unfold with the most diverse group of electors in history. The 135 cardinal electors come from 71 countries across all inhabited continents. The traditional European power centers have seen their influence diminish. Italy now has just 16 cardinals, down from 28 in the previous conclave. Within this transformed electoral landscape, the 19 African cardinals will form a significant voting bloc. Not enough to elect a pope on their own, but sufficient to influence the outcome substantially. The Catholic Church's relationship with Africa is complex and contradictory. While missionaries often arrived alongside colonial powers, spreading Christianity as part of the colonial project, the Church has also been a space where Africans found ways to resist colonial dominance. In Burkina Faso specifically, Catholicism arrived with French colonizers in 1896. The White Fathers established missions in Kupela, 1900, and Ouagadougou, 1901, initiating a process of evangelization that was inseparable from the French colonial enterprise. The first Burkinabe baptisms took place in 1905, marking the beginning of a church that would grow to include approximately 20% of the country's population. Yet this same institution later produced African leaders who challenged colonial and neo-colonial structures. Abbé Yugbare was consecrated as Bishop of Kupela in 1956, becoming the first African Catholic bishop, a milestone in African Catholic leadership. Today, the Catholic Church in Burkina Faso faces acute challenges that have undoubtedly shaped Cardinal Ouédraogo's worldview. Since 2015, the country has experienced an intensifying campaign of violence by armed groups linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. Christians have become specific targets in these attacks, with churches, priests, and worshippers suffering deadly violence. This escalating religious persecution creates a paradoxical situation for Catholic leaders like Cardinal Ouédraogo. On one hand, they must defend their communities against extremist violence. On the other hand, they recognize that Western military interventions, often framed as protecting Christians, frequently exacerbate regional instability and resentment. Cardinal Ouédraogo has had to navigate this precarious situation, advocating for the safety of his flock while understanding the complex geopolitical dynamics that fuel extremism. This experience places him in a unique position to understand the limitations of Western security paradigms and the need for African-led solutions to African problems, a perspective that aligns with Traoré's anti-imperial stance, though through a different lens. The Church in Burkina Faso also operates in a religiously diverse society, where Catholics coexist with a Muslim majority, approximately 60% of the population, and practitioners of traditional African religions. Interfaith dialogue is not an abstract theological concept here, but a daily necessity. Cardinal Ouédraogo, coming from a family with Muslim roots, embodies this interfaith reality in his own biography. This religious pluralism within Burkina Faso has fostered a distinct form of Catholicism, one that must engage seriously with Islamic perspectives and indigenous spiritual traditions. The result is a more dialogical, less Eurocentric expression of the faith than is often found in European Catholicism. Cardinal Ouédraogo brings this pluralistic experience into a conclave otherwise dominated by cardinals from more religiously homogeneous societies. This history of both complicity and resistance makes the Catholic Church in Africa a complex institution, one that has been both an instrument of colonial control and a platform for African agency. Cardinal Ouédraogo stands in this complicated tradition, embodying both the institutional power of the Church and the potential for transformative leadership from within. What happens if Cardinal Ouédraogo brings Traoré's revolutionary spirit into the conclave? Imagine a papal conclave where the language of anti-colonialism, resource sovereignty, and African dignity enters discussions typically dominated by European theological concerns. A conclave where Cardinal Ouédraogo might echo Traoré's question, why do Western powers call African self-defense fighters militias, while in Europe, those who take up arms to defend their homeland are called patriots? What if the next pope emerges with a mandate to confront the Church's colonial history and its continuing economic entanglements with Western power structures? The implications would be profound. The Catholic Church remains one of the most powerful global institutions, with influence extending far beyond religion into politics, economics, and international relations. A shift in the Church's stance on issues like international debt, resource extraction, and Western military presence in Africa could significantly impact global power dynamics. For African Catholics, who have often had to reconcile their faith with the Church's colonial history, such a transformation could represent a long-awaited acknowledgement of their full humanity and agency within the faith. For Western Catholics, it would present a challenging but potentially revitalizing call to confront historical injustices. An African-influenced papacy could reorient the Church's priorities toward issues that affect the majority of the world's Catholics who now live in the global South. Poverty, environmental degradation, political instability, and the ongoing effects of colonialism. This is not merely about representation. It's about fundamentally reshaping the institution's understanding of its mission in the world. Just as Traoré's revolution seeks to reimagine Burkina Faso's relationship with former colonial powers, an African-influenced papacy could reimagine the Church's relationship with its own colonial past and post-colonial present. As the white smoke eventually rises above the Vatican, the world will witness either the continuation of centuries of European domination or the beginning of a new chapter. Cardinal Ouédraogo may not become Pope himself, but his presence, carrying the revolutionary spirit of his homeland, could fundamentally alter the Church's future direction. In the tension between Ibrahim Traoré's revolutionary directness and Cardinal Ouédraogo's institutional navigation lies a powerful question. Can the institutions created to maintain colonial power be transformed from within? The conclave will answer this question, not just for the Catholic Church, but for all institutions born in the age of empire. The symmetry is striking. As Traoré leads a revolution against neo-colonial influence in Burkina Faso, Ouédraogo enters a conclave that could revolutionize one of the West's most enduring institutions. Both men carry the legacy of Thomas Sankara, one explicitly through political rhetoric and policy, the other implicitly through his commitment to African dignity and social justice. Both represent the possibility of transformation, Traoré through direct confrontation with imperial power, Ouédraogo through patient navigation of institutional structures. Both embody the spirit of resistance that has characterized Burkina Faso's history since the days of the Mossi kingdoms that successfully resisted forced conversion to Islam for centuries. This is why the converging stories of these two Burkinabe leaders matter beyond their nation's borders. They represent two complementary strategies for African liberation, revolutionary rupture, and institutional transformation. The success of either approach would represent a significant challenge to Western hegemony. Burkina Faso, the land of upright people, now stands at the crossroads of history, with both a revolutionary captain and a cardinal poised to reshape our world. In a world still dominated by Western institutions and interests, these twin paths of resistance from a small, landlocked West African nation remind us that Africa's voice will not be silenced. Whether through Traoré's bold defiance or Ouédraogo's patient persistence, the spirit of revolution continues to challenge the structures that have extracted Africa's wealth and constrained its sovereignty for centuries. As smoke rises from the Sistine Chapel in the coming days, we will witness whether the revolutionary spirit of Africa can penetrate the ancient walls of the Vatican. Whatever the outcome, the mere presence of Cardinal Ouédraogo in that sacred space represents a victory, a testament to Africa's resilience and enduring quest for dignity. The struggle continues on two fronts. In the presidential palace in Ouagadougou, where Captain Traoré challenges Western imperial power directly, and in the corridors of the Vatican, where Cardinal Ouédraogo carries the hopes and struggles of a continent seeking recognition and respect within one of the West's most powerful institutions. Their parallel journeys remind us that revolution comes in many forms. Sometimes it arrives with the suddenness of a military coup, other times with the patience of decades spent working within the system. But always, it is animated by the same fundamental demand that Africa and Africans be recognized as full authors of their own destiny. As Thomas Sankara once declared, and as both Traoré and Ouédraogo embody in their different ways, we must dare to invent the future. The question is not whether revolution will come, but which path will prove more effective in achieving it. Perhaps the answer is neither alone, but the combination of both. The revolutionary pressure from outside the system and the transformative work from within. In this historic moment, with a revolutionary captain in the presidential palace and a cardinal in the Sistine Chapel, Burkina Faso, the land of upright people, offers the world two visions of resistance and transformation. Their convergence could reshape not just a nation, but the relationship between Africa and the West for generations to come. La patrie ou la mort, nous vaincrons. Homeland or death, we will prevail.